Chapter 5 How Dorothy Became a Princess. When the people of the Emerald City heard that Dorothy had returned to them, everyone was eager to see her, for the little girl was a general favorite in the land of Oz. From time to time, some of the folk from the great outside world had found their way into this fairyland, but all except one had been companions of Dorothy and had turned out to be very agreeable people. The exception I speak of was the wonderful Wizard of Oz, a sleight-of-hand performer from Omaha, who went up in a balloon and was carried by a current of air to the Emerald City. His queer and puzzling tricks made the people of Oz believe him a great wizard for a time, and he ruled over them until Dorothy arrived on her first visit and showed the wizard to be a mere humbug. He was a gentle, kind-hearted little man, and Dorothy grew to like him afterwards. When, after an absence, the wizard returned to the land of Oz, Ozma received him graciously and gave him a home in a part of the palace. In addition to the wizard, two other personages from the outside world had been allowed to make their home in the Emerald City. The first was a quaint, shaggy man, whom Ozma had made the governor of the royal stone houses, and the second a yellow hen named Bellina, how could I forget Bellina, who had a fine house in the gardens back of the palace where she looked after a large family. Both these had been old comrades of Dorothy, so you see the little girl was quite an important personage in Oz, and the people thought she had brought them good luck and loved her next best to Ozma. During her several visits, the little girl had been the means of destroying two wicked witches who oppressed the people, and she had discovered a live scarecrow who is now one of the most popular personages in the fairy country. With the scarecrow's help, she had rescued Nick Chopper, a tin woodman who had rusted in a lonely forest, and the Tin Man was now emperor of the country of the Winkies and much beloved because of his kind heart. No wonder the people thought Dorothy had brought them good luck. Yet strange as it may seem, she had accomplished all these wonders, not because she was a fairy or had any magical powers whatever, but because she was a simple, sweet, and true little girl who was honest to herself and to all whom she met. In this world in which we live, simplicity and kindness are the only magic wands that work wonders, and in the land of Oz, Dorothy found that these same qualities had won for her the love and admiration of the people. Indeed, the little girl had made warm friends in this fairy country, and the only real grief the Ozites had ever experienced was when Dorothy left them and returned to her Kansas home. Now she received a joyful welcome, although no one except Ozma knew at first that she had finally come to stay for good and all. That evening, Dorothy had many callers, among them such important people as Tick-Tock, a machine man who thought and spoke and moved by clockwork, her old companion, the genial Shaggy Man, Jack Pumpkinhead, whose body was brushwood and whose head was a ripe pumpkin with a face carved upon it, the Cowardly Lion and the Hungry Tiger, two great beasts from the forest, who served Princess Ozma, and Professor H.M. Wogglebug, T.E. This Wogglebug was a remarkable creature. He had once been a tiny little bug crawling around in a schoolroom, but he was discovered and highly magnified so that he could be seen more plainly. And while in this magnified condition, he had escaped. He had always remained big and dressed like a dandy, and was so full of knowledge and information, which are distinct acquirements, that he had been made a professor and the head of the Royal College. Dorothy had a nice visit with these old friends and also talked a long time with the wizard, who was little and old and withered and dried up, but as merry and active as a child. Afterward, she went to see Belinda's fast-growing family of chicks. Toto, Dorothy's little black dog, also met with a cordial reception. Toto was a special friend of the Shaggy Man, and he knew everyone else. Being the only dog in the land of Oz, he was highly respected by the people, who believed animals entitled to every consideration if they behaved themselves properly. Dorothy had 4 lovely rooms in this palace, which were always reserved for her use and were called Dorothy's rooms. These consisted of a beautiful sitting room, a dressing room, a dainty bedchamber, and a big marble bathroom. And in these rooms were everything that heart could desire, placed there with loving thoughtfulness by Ozma for her little friend's use. The royal dressmakers had the little girl's measure, so they kept the closets in her dressing room filled with lovely dresses of every description and suitable for every occasion. No wonder Dorothy had refrained from bringing with her her old calico and gingham dresses. Here everything that was dear to the little girl's heart was supplied in profusion, and nothing so rich and beautiful could ever have been found in the largest department stores in America. Of course, Dorothy enjoyed all these luxuries, and the only reason she had heretofore preferred to live in Texas was because Kansas, was because her aunt and uncle loved her and needed her with them. Oh, hello, Spot. Now, however, all was to be changed, and Dorothy was really more delighted to know that her dear relatives were to share in her good fortune and enjoy the delights of the land of Oz, where she was to possess such luxury for herself. Next morning, at Ozma's request, Dorothy dressed herself in a pretty sky blue gown of rich silk, trimmed with real pearls. The buckles of her shoes were set with pearls too, and more of these precious gems were on a lovely coronet which she wore upon her forehead.
"For," said her friend Ozma, "from this time forth, my dear, you must assume your rightful rank as a princess of Oz, and being my chosen companion, you must dress in a way befitting the dignity of your position."
Dorothy agreed to this, although she knew that neither gowns nor jewels could make her anything else than the simple, unaffected little girl she had always been. As soon as they had breakfast, the girls eating together in Ozma's pretty boudoir, the ruler of Oz said,
"Now, dear friend, we will use the magic belt to transport your uncle and aunt from Kansas to the Emerald City. But I think it would be fitting, in receiving such distinguished guests, for us to sit in my throne room." Oh, they're not very distinguished, Ozma. They're just plain people like me." "Being your friends and relatives, Princess Dorothy, they are certainly distinguished." "Well, they won't hardly know what to make of all your splendid furniture and things. It may scare 'em to see a grand throne room, and perhaps we better go into the backyard, Ozma, where the cabbages grow and the chickens are playing. Then it would seem more natural to Uncle Henry and Aunt Em." "No, they shall first see me in my throne room."
And when she spoke like that, Dorothy knew it was not wise to oppose her, for Ozma was accustomed to having her own way. So together they went to the throne room, an immense domed chamber in the center of the palace. Here stood the royal throne, made of solid gold and encrusted with enough precious stones to stock a dozen jewelry stores in our country. Ozma, who was wearing the magic belt, seated herself in the throne, and Dorothy sat at her feet. In the room there assembled many ladies and gentlemen of the court, clothed in rich apparel and wearing fine jewelry. Two immense animals squatted, one on each side of the throne, the cowardly lion and the hungry tiger.
Tiger.
Yeah.
You keep calling him a tiger.
Tiger?
Yeah,
it's
you
tiger.
did before. It's tiger.
Tiger,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you, Mom. In a balcony high up in the dome, an orchestra played sweet music, and beneath the dome, two electric fountains sent sprays of colored perfumed water shooting up nearly as high as the arched ceiling.
"Are you ready, Dorothy?" "Oh, I am, but I don't know whether Aunt Em and Uncle Henry are ready." "That won't matter. The old life can have very little interest to them, and the sooner they begin their new life here, the happier they will be. Here they come, my dear."
As she spoke, there before the throne appeared Uncle Henry and Aunt Em, who for a moment stood motionless, glaring with white and startled faces at the scene that confronted them. If the ladies and gentlemen present had not been so polite, I am sure they would have laughed at the two strangers. Aunt Em had her calico skirt tucked up, and she wore a faded blue-checked apron. Her hair was rather straggly, and she had a pair of Uncle Henry's old slippers. In one hand she held a dish towel, and in the other a